What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at EX Angel. For those of you who did not see my summoning video yesterday, we were able to go ahead and pick up EX Angel. We ended up getting her to A3, as a matter of fact. So in today's video, I am going to give you guys a little bit of footage using the character, specifically against Omega Rugal in Guild Raid. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about my first impressions now that I've had a chance to test this character hands-on, because I'm going to tell you guys right now, in certain places in this game, this character is an absolute powerhouse, an absolute monster, and one of my favorite characters in the entire game for one specific mode, which we'll talk about in today's video. But before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Cue that intro. Alright, you guys, so in today's video, we're going to talk about EX Angel in all of her glory, now that I have had about 24 hours to play around with her. For those of you who did not see my summon session yesterday, link will be in the description if you want to check that out. However, if you've made it this far, spoiler alert, yeah, we ended up getting a whole lot of EX Angels. So in today's video, I want to talk about her and just some first impressions that I've kind of made from playing around with her over the course of the past 24 hours in various game modes. Because thus far, I'm very, very happy with this character in specific instances, but in other areas, of course, this character is going to fall very short. Now, when it comes to EX Angel, a couple things I want to talk about. First things first here, guys. This character in things such as Guild Raid against Omega Rugal in particular, because of the specific dots needed, particularly in Inferno, is probably, no hyperbole, the easiest one-key solo you will ever have in this game with one character. Like, straight up, this is probably going to be my go-to character for Omega Rugal on days where I really just don't feel like doing anything with it, and I just want to get the quick one key and just get out of there. So, I can tell you guys right now, I have never had a character that is more idiot-proof in that mode that I have been able to play around with than this one. Honestly, with this character, all you really need to do is you just go in, you just go 2-1-3, 2-1-3, 2-1-3, use your finisher, whatever, use your awakening spam. Rugal has no option. He has literally no room to breathe, and honestly, outside of this character being a little bit squishy there, she does make up for that a little bit with her shield. She doesn't really have anything to complain about against Omega Rugal. I'm just going to tell you guys that right now. I'm going to show you guys some footage at the end of this video where you guys can take a look at a run that I did in Inferno. But I'm going to tell you guys right now, this character against Omega Rugal, because of her possessing not just poison, but also she does have bleed on her kit as well. And being that those are the two dots needed for Inferno difficulty against Omega Rugal, this guy literally has no chance. No chance at all. This is the most amount of damage at an A3 character that I've ever gotten on this mode, and it is pretty darn impressive. So I'm going to show you guys that footage in today's video once we get done with the talk here. But other things here, I did go through pretty much the big three as far as the different difficulties against Omega Rugal, and it was just varying degrees of just absolute curb stomping, to be honest. Even without the preferred dot for both Lunatic and Expert, this character was able to go in and just absolutely tank through this guy without a problem. And in general, yeah, the damage is just impressive with this character in Omega Rugal's Guild Raid. I really cannot stress that enough. And when it comes to bullying Omega Rugal at this point, I don't know how much more this man can take, because this poor guy went from the top of the mountain down to the bottom of the barrel, right? As far as the difficulty level goes, my God, what a difference a year and a half makes. So, when it comes to Guild Raid, of course, we've talked about it now. EX Angel, due to the fact that she has those dots, she has that explosion, she has a shield, and she does ridiculous damage. Yeah, absolutely OP there. Easily my favorite character to solo with against Omega Rugal, and I've only had to play around with her for 24 hours, so I'd imagine that I am only going to grow more fond of her in that mode once we get further in. Now, with that being said, however, there's some issues. So this character has a really sus finisher, right? So her 3PG finisher is very unfortunate. We had talked about when this character got announced, we took a look at that initial release trailer, and we talked about the fact that this finisher here could likely end up being not useful against the majority of bosses in this game. And that is actually going to be the case against any of your giant bosses, because this does require a grab. Basically, what's going to happen here is you're going to start this up in things such as Immortals or against Spider Robot, and this is just going to completely cancel itself out. So unfortunately, this character gets docked some major points because she really is not all that useful outside of specific instances where her finisher is going to be usable. Because at the end of the day, if your 3PG finisher can't even be used, that hurts you a lot. I mean, a lot. I cannot stress that enough, because basically it takes your use cases and throws a lot of them out the window. However, that is her biggest issue in my opinion, because outside of that, unless we're talking about ungrabbable bosses with that finisher, this character is absolutely insane. Another thing that I figured out about her just playing around with her skills, the XY axis on them isn't necessarily going to be the most forgiving. So by that, what I mean is basically against mobs in her zoning, she can a lot of the times whiff on a lot of these minions. So this character in general can have a few issues there as well. I mean, it isn't necessarily anything that's going to make or break her, that I would say, but at the same time, I did notice that she whiffs quite often against minions. So that is something to keep in mind. Outside of that, really, minions are minions, so there really isn't much more to complain about outside of the fact that her XY axis isn't the greatest. But at the same time, that is something that is definitely worth noting. But another thing against minions that is worth noting is she does apply her Venom on the S2 here to all enemies when she applies it, and it's a 10-second duration. So her duration on her poison is very good. But do keep in mind that on the drive skill here, she does have that 5.5 times explosion, so that is pretty darn crazy when you consider the fact that she can poison everybody on the board at once. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Other things in here about this character, in general, it goes without saying, but finish rolling, which is going to be basically her version of Stun Fang that SS Blue Mary before her introduced, and then Akuma also carried a version of. Well, now she has her own, which is finishing roll. Finish roll here basically is going to have bleed on it, so that's where you're going to see that other dot that we had talked about when we talked about Omega Rugal. So in general, super good stuff. Symbol is also really good for her overall damage output, especially the part where you're increasing your poison explosion by 200% upon attacking a target with Symbol. It's still a very weird core to me, but this character's damage, like her burst damage, is ludicrous against Omega Rugal. So in general, this character in all the different game modes that you would want to use her, you know, we've talked about already how she is a green balance type, so for high levels of Reviving Hell's Dungeon, she has a shield, she has explosion, she has the right typing, so this is going to be a character that's very useful there, but there are going to be instances where she isn't necessarily going to be the greatest because of this finisher, so that's something to keep in mind. It does hold her back a little bit. But outside of that, as far as what I'm using on her, this is what I'm using here. Largely, when it comes to the transcendental effects that I got on some of these, I really didn't get anything great. So I got defense on this one here. And then on the option card for her, I also got defense. Go figure. And then the only thing I think I got that was even halfway useful was on one of these. It was it? What was it? Oh, it's this one here. It is Balanced TIE Fighter's Attack. So this one here, I did get a beneficial one, but really what you guys are going to see in the footage is basically just EX on Hell doing EX on Hell things. You know, in general, another place that I was able to tinker around, and again, guys, I've only had her for 24 hours. I was able to tinker around with her in PVAI. PVAI, she's very good as well. You have to be a little bit careful with how you cast her skills with her. She's very quick, and her skills are a little bit interesting with the way that they time. So when you're juggling a character in PVAI, you want to be a little bit cognizant and just kind of learn how to time your skills. But outside of that, that's just something you'd say for almost any character, really. But, you know, at the end of the day, PVAI, she's an absolute beast there, so I can't complain. In general, this character is, yeah, she's really good, but she does have her drawbacks. I am going to be doing a spotlight on her once I get a little bit more time to play around with her. In general, though, I am very happy in certain instances. Like I said, this is easily my favorite character to ever release for Omega Rugal, because honestly, again, this character is just pure, straight up idiot proof. Like, this is the easiest character to take into Omega Rugal you'll ever find, just from a presentation standpoint of just using the character, and just from the overall damage aspect of it. You're not going to have any issues one keying if you have this character at, I would even say, like an A2. Like, I don't think this character would have a problem at A1 or A2, really at all. You know, I'd have to see that in action to tell you guys for sure, but I really don't think that you would have a whole lot of issues there, just based on the ridiculous amount of damage that I'm getting out of her. You know, it's just absolutely crazy. And these are the stones I'm using, just FYI, guys. So I do have the star stone here, but it's a defense stone. Unfortunately, I don't have a double attack one, but it does have poison on it, and it increases my balance type fighter's attack, so that's what I got there. Then I just got the EX stones, so not anything out of the ordinary. I don't have enough of the tokens in order to craft the other stone yet, but I will be getting the moonstone for the Operation Kitty stone, so that'll end up going to her as well eventually. And I'm very curious to see how that ramps her damage, because her damage is already bonkers, just absolutely tier uber crazy bonkers damage. So, you know, at the end of the day with this character, I could be more happy with her. There are certain things about her that I do have issue with and I take umbrage with. We'll talk about in the spotlight when I get it together. But I always like to do kind of these first impression videos with you guys, just so you kind of get an idea of where I stand with the character. I don't think this is a character that's a must-have by any stretch of the imagination, unless you're just a giant fan of Angel, or for whatever reason you still need a whole lot of help against Omega Rugal. Outside of that, I think that this is an entirely skippable character, based solely upon the fact that this is a character that doesn't really offer anything that I see outside of her support ability, which honestly is worth noting here real quick, guys. So she does have some very interesting EX cores, as well as that symbol core, which is really interesting. So in general, I think that this is a character that could be interesting from a support standpoint for a team, especially considering her leadership ability and all the things that she has going on with her EX cores and so on. But in general, I don't think that this is a must-have character. I think that once we sit down and do the spotlight, and I kind of go through the pros and cons and where she's really good and where she's kind of lacking, you guys are going to see that this is a character that largely isn't going to be covering a whole lot of ground in the game, in my opinion. I feel like this is more so going to be a specialty character that you're going to take into specific things where she's absolutely going to dominate. However, outside of those things, she kind of drops down to being kind of average to below average against some of these other game modes. A lot of it having to do with that 3PG finisher. So you guys have seen the equipment. This is the equipment I use in the video today. When you see the footage, you've seen the stones, so you guys will know what's going on there. Outside of that, I can show you my fame again, just so that way you guys kind of get your daily dose of what my fame looks like. But in general, you guys, that's pretty much what I'm feeling when it comes to EX Angel at this point. I'm in love with this character in Omega Rugal, like straight up. I love using this character. Absolutely love using this character. I think you will too if you have her. Let me know in the comments section down below how you're feeling about using her. But with all that being said, we'll be doing a spotlight where we'll go more in depth with this character later on when I've had more time to play around with her and get some footage together and test things. But I just wanted to get you guys kind of my 24-hour first impressions, reactions to this character so far, because like I said, I just got her yesterday. So I'm gonna let you guys enjoy the footage. But thank you all so much for watching. If you did, on your way out, smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Peace.
opinion.